Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic interview show. This is episode 625. We got a returning friend of the show, a panelist on the Round Table show. He was on a few weeks ago, but we decided to have him back because we're going to be talking to Spencer Forman about his experiences with LaunchFlows, what he has learnt about marketing a plugin. It should be a great show. I'm going to let Spencer quickly introduce himself, plus my co-host, Stephen. So over to you, Spencer. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Hello. It's Spencer Forman. And today I'm from LaunchFlows.com, sometimes from WP-Launchify.com, but all related.
Pulling out the different passport, different citizenship.
It is. And I've got my great co-host, Stephen. Stephen, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Yep, Stephen Souter from zipfish.io.
And if you really want to support the show, listeners and viewers, tell your friends about WP-Tonic and the podcast. That's how this show grows, by word of mouth. It's like a rash. It just grows. So tell your friends, and that will be great. We really appreciate if you do that. Also, I'm going to talk quickly about our major sponsor. That's Castos. I was with another company about 9 months ago. I've been with them for about 4 years. Castos came on my radar. I decided to jump ship. I paid out of my own pocket. It was getting increasingly expensive to run a successful podcast on the previous platform. They had an increasing rate of charge. Castos has a flat rate, so it's really very affordable from the start. And as you get more successful, you're not penalized. It's also got a great interface, great support. Matt Medeus from the Matt Report is now their director of sales and customer experience, a really experienced individual in podcasting and WordPress. So if you're looking to get into podcasting, and you should, either for yourself or for your clients, go and have a look at Castos. Also, if you go to WP-Tonic newsletters, there's a special deal on there exclusively for the WP tribe. For the first 6 months, you get it for half price. It is an amazing offer. So let's go straight into it. So Spencer, you decided to get into the plugin. You've been there before, but this was slightly new, I feel, LaunchFlows. What did you want to achieve initially? You know, obviously you wanted to make money, be successful, but I can't remember how long LaunchFlows has been going. And have you achieved the level of success that you thought you could with it? Let's start off with there.
Every time I think I'm out, they keep pulling me back in. So it started out like everything else. As an entrepreneur, the number one rule that I've taught people, I follow it myself, I can't escape its gravity, is find the pain, solve the pain, teach how to solve the pain, make a product out of the solution for the pain. That model
and become a billionaire.
Eventually, maybe, but along the way, I'm not so sure these days whether being a billionaire is what it's cut out to be, but like certainly along the way, you end up on a show like WP-Tonic Roundtable. Under the radar, covering your needs, making a livelihood, that is absolutely more than possible. I can attest to that from clients and my own personal experience. So from that standpoint, the pain that existed was this. In the space that I've been an expert in for the last 15 years or so, WooCommerce has played a role, at least for the last 12 or so that it's been around, of needing other than a Home Depot shopping experience. So whether you're doing things for free or you're selling things, everybody needs to onboard their potential users and so forth. And maybe they're going to be paying customers. WooCommerce has an amazing array of capability, but it's set up out of the box and still to this day defaults to being like the Home Depot, which is a far different experience than what you get, let's say, when you go on even an Amazon or whether you go to some smaller shop. One is like wander the aisles and hope we know where to find something out of a trillion SKUs, and then maybe go back 80 times.
I just can't go there. Every time somebody drags me there, I just go, oh my God. Sorry.
And I used to do, no, right. But I mean, I used to build houses. I built 50 custom homes, and I used to spend most days at Home Depot. And it was, even for myself, like mind-numbing. Now compare that to the experience where you get on most websites today or on Amazon, where you can just type in a search, immediately go to the product, go click. I bought some headsets, I swear to God. I woke up at 4 a.m. the other day. I wanted to know about these. These are the kind of headsets that are like induction. They don't go in your ear. Ordered them at 4 a.m. They arrived by 9 o'clock the next morning. That's a modern sales funnel. And WooCommerce has the capability to achieve that, but only with an additional helper plugin. Now, that was the origin of the problem. And that was first revealed, in fairness, by Adam Presser and Sujay Pawar over at their combination CartFlows. I got involved because Sujay invited me to get involved with promoting and teaching marketing using CartFlows. We were just talking about this before the show. Pioneers in the space of extending WooCommerce into solving that pain, which is sales funnels. I immediately fell in love with their product, but I immediately found problems with it because their product involves making a full framework and doing a lot of stuff, which, listen, they're incredibly talented people and it's a great product, but it was heavier than I thought it should be. I immediately brought it to Sujay's attention. We had a professional disagreement which way to go. So in the fall of 2019, I decided to make the plugin that I thought CartFlows should be. Obviously confusing people a lot on purpose. I called it LaunchFlows because there was other term like carts and launches and and there's click funnels and, you know, funnels, flows, launch, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the origin of the story. And it started around the fall of 2019. We onboarded several hundred people initially for the first versions. And like anything else, you know, what are we now? Like 2 years later, maybe.
It goes quick, doesn't it?
2 years later, and now it has grown proportional to the development and proportional to the other things. I think it's a terrific success for what I'm doing because I use this as an onboarding to my consultancy. The people who want and need what I'm offering here, even truthfully with CartFlows, don't work in a vacuum. They get all these plugins and then they need help or they need expert advice on what to do with them. So, you know, having a bunch of tools in your garage sounds awesome. I'm one of those guys. But if you don't actually know how to build stuff with it, it doesn't really help you at all. And so that's where we're at today, which is we've proven the plugin. It's in version 3.53. Its feature set is amazing. And we also discovered this year, we'll talk about lifetime deals, pricing models, how customers want to use your products, frameworks versus not. Because I've learned a hell of a lot about how the software world has evolved in WordPress.
Before I throw it over to Stephen, do you think there's kind of plugin platforms that you can set up your plugin and they deal with all the cells, and there's platforms out there, free, one of them, the name escapes me. Do you think it's easier to launch a plugin now than it used to be in some ways?
Are you asking me or Stephen?
No, to you.
I think well, here's my answer. The business opportunities that exist now have been now amplified times 100. Here's why. Up until Gutenberg, up until the recent React and the rest of it, we had a pretty steady, but, you know, like slowly growing mass of plugins, but there was the gorillas in the room all the time, right? And so you had opportunities, but people were focused on stuff that there's already been 10 years of backlog and politics and everything. So now they put Gutenberg in, and then the whole page builder thing gets stirred up. And now you've got React involved. And now you've got capabilities that weren't there before. It's like somebody took a snow globe to WordPress and shook it up. And now everything is open to possibilities. So the opportunities are the most exciting part. You don't have to be a Yoast-sized plugin with millions of users. You could go in as a single developer and solve a minuscule pain point and make a legitimate livelihood at it. But it has to be very specific and you have to be good at marketing. because that's the part that's changed with the AI and the other, we were talking about cost of Facebook ads. You can't just rely on having like, wow, it's a pretty flower in a blank field. Now it's like 10 million flowers and you have to stand above on some particular purpose and reason and be very crafty about it.
Over to you, Stephen.
So before we dive into like the pricing model and marketing and selling and all of that stuff, I think something that has always intrigued me about LaunchFlows versus other plugin developers that I've talked to is a lot of people talk about their free plugin in the repository, the official WordPress repository, leading to sales. And that was like a key element of their marketing and sales strategy. You, at least from what I know, haven't embraced that at all. No. Why? And how do you, it just feels like everyone's saying like, this is how you do it. Why did you choose a different direction? And how does that work when you do choose that different direction?
It's interesting, but the point, and that's, thank you for asking the question. That's a very insightful question. The thing is, one has to be true to themselves. Okay. We talk about that on the show. No, I mean, that's a really second level question. And I appreciate that. You have to be true to yourself. Okay. I'm 72 years old, like we talk about regularly. And I can't act like one of these kids, these 22-year-olds anymore. As a result, I have to rely upon my strengths and not the things that maybe would be my weakness. Like I'm really in good shape and I take care of myself, but I'd look really ridiculous wearing one of those haircuts or something like a 20-year-old wore, right? And I'd look really ridiculous as an old man trying to market my services and expertise as like a 20-year-old. So what I've chosen to do is leverage that capability. I had a model that I taught for many years called the birdie on the hippo's back model, which is essentially you find a community where there's already an audience. You ingratiate yourself to that audience, like a birdie who lands on a hippo's back is allowed to pick all the bugs off and eat all at once. The hippo not only tolerates it, it welcomes it because it makes the hippo feel good. And in this case, you find that audience where you could come in with a pain point. And maybe it's an extension of an existing plugin, or maybe it's, fixing a pain that everybody has with the platform because you can get to the API or something. And that's what I've done because I get two benefits from that. First of all, I have traditionally spent $0 on advertising anything because my biggest problem is that my niches are so specialized that I'm better off just going to the communities where the pain is, in a very agile way, just like immediately hacking together a solution and seeing how many people will give me the money for it. Kind of like, hey, I'm going to make hot dogs for lunch at work. Anybody want to give me money? And I think that's a model that for many people can work, but it requires one unique characteristic. You have to be a carnival barker. And that's kind of me. Some people are like that. I mean, Noah Kagan, I used to play chess with, and he's well known, but Noah Kagan was the original carnival barker. And you can see his history is not that dissimilar, even though he's a third my age or 2/3 my age. He has his whole origin story of being at Facebook, and they kicked his ass out of Facebook. But then he went on to do AppSumo the way he wanted to do it, which is very much what I'm talking about, where they would hack together videos, then they hack together deals, then they hack together this, and it works. So,
just off topic, I'm really surprised that he hasn't been sued, because the reason I say that, in a public podcast that he did, he admitted that he drove in his Tesla automatically when he was actually on a computer.
I don't know. Maybe it's a story. That's hard to prove in a court of law.
He basically admitted doing that on a public podcast. And
well, you remember the time you admitted to, getting rid of your first wife, but we don't talk about that.
No, we don't.
Anyway, so the point is that there are certain well-known people. Frank Kern, who's still buzzing around Facebook ads these days. You see, I don't know, you don't see him too much. The guy who started WPMU, his name is escaping me for a second. There's a couple characters out there that I like to relate to myself, and I can appreciate that from a marketing standpoint, it works. Russell Brunson is the king of all kings, but he did it his way, and he was, look what he's built from that. The products, not so great. The promise, amazing. And so that just proves the point, is that we oftentimes overbuild the solution. I mean, frankly, most people need like a butter knife, and then they buy a 20-piece, hex toolkit or something like that. So.
Yeah, we need to go for our break. We'll be back in a few moments with this great chat with a great WordPress entrepreneur, Spencer Forman. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. Got a friend of the show, to say that.
James Farmer. I had an adult moment.
Oh, yes,
there.
James.
James is very controversial in a good way.
It's difficult to have people from Australia on your podcast because they always want you to change the time that you're doing it because every time they go on a podcast, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning for them. Well,
they're at 13. They're 15 hours off of you. So for you, it's the opposite side of the day, but wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. We're coming back. We've had a great conversation already. Back over to you, Stephen.
All right. So no plugin in the WordPress repository, but then you also did a lifetime deal. Did you use AppSumo to do a lifetime deal?
Yeah. So that's an interesting story. So by the way, we talked about it on the WP-Tonic show. I did, as a goof, to see if I could do it, because for lots of reasons, get a plugin in the repository. And the plugin is called Fix Gutenberg. And it makes it's still in there and it still works. It makes Gutenberg look more like classic because I'm better at Gutenberg, but I'm amazed that like nobody thought it was a good idea to put space between all the meta boxes. But in any event,
how many installs do you have on that one?
That's a good question. I don't know. Let's see. Hold on. Fix.
It's probably like 1 million.
I mean, it's probably you, me, and
I definitely installed it and played around with it for a while. It was great.
There are. Wow, I've got. What's funny? This is probably all you guys. There's 3 5-star reviews and the fewer than 10 active installations.
It's that review to active installations is probably
climbing the charts fast. But the point was, it was a goof because I wanted to see what the process was like. I mean, I need to be able to experience things to speak honestly about them. I think that's a legitimate press tool, and somebody who's a recommended expert, I need to really use this stuff. But insofar as the lifetime deal, what happened was, it was actually through some friends here on the show, right? So Vito or Andrew were discussing that there are certain instances where they've found lifetime deals are very advantageous. And as a person who's made my livelihood as being an expert on marketing and psychology, strategy, and so forth, at first I was a little resistant. In fact, I came out and said, I don't think you're right. I think there's very few times that a business should ever offer a lifetime deal unless they're either just starting out or they're in a fire sale. But they did open my eyes up enough. And that's one of the things I've always admitted to, is that I'm very strong-willed, very strong personality, but when I do get something,
you don't say. Spencer.
I know, right? It's so weird. Here's the reason why I'm willing to say I'm wrong. There's nothing worse to me than being wrong factually and sticking with that. So it's less hurtful to my ego to be wrong, give credit that somebody proved me wrong, and be right than to remain stubbornly wrong, like many people do in politics and stuff like that. Okay. So in this case, they turned me onto it and I started digging, and I actually found it was interesting. There are 3 plugins that were solving this problem. There's maybe more, of WooCommerce being more of a sales funnel tool than a Home Depot. CardFlows, LaunchFlows, and then Damon Jeet and his wife had an amazing kind of rough around the edges plugin called WooFunnels. Yeah. That they saw the opportunity and they went full throttle on making theirs into a competitor. So it's fair to say there's maybe 1 or 2 weird other ones, but those are the 3 main competitors. Those 2 are frameworks, mine's not. But to the point, that when it came to like selling it, I decided that if those guys are going to go for throwing everything plus the kitchen sink into this huge framework and 16 different page builders being supported with templates and it's like, I'm going to let them burn themselves out. Not that they're going to, because they're both selling, I know, very large quantities of deals. I decided it's me, myself, and I'm going the other way, and I'm going down on price and more value, more simplicity, easier to use. So I'm going Swiss Army knife where they're going for Tesla Gigafactory. And that was a perfect match for lifetime deals because I discovered this entire universe on Facebook of hustlers. And I mean hustlers in a sort of good way, that they have 6,000 people in their community that will buy anything presented to them as long as it has the word LTD at the end of it. And so I tested the waters. I took LaunchFlows, which was originally launched as by the way, LaunchFlows originally, I rewarded all my early adopters by, first it was 97, and I said it's going to go up in price. Then it was 149, then 197. But eventually a single year of unlimited sites was $300 per year. I said, screw it. We're doing an LTD. It was $199 for unlimited sites lifetime. I made the deal with this partner. We split the revenue in a way that was favorable to me. I still got my baseline. He launched it properly and sold nearly 500,000 users. I mean, like hundreds and hundreds of people. Now, I don't know whether any of these people needed it or wanted it, but I put a special few conditions in there because I saw what other lifetime deals went wrong. And I said this to Vito and Andrew. I said, it's lifetime updates automatically. Lifetime access to the plugin, as long as the plugin's needed on this planet. It's 2 years support. Mm-hmm. And I got all this pushback. And I said, hey,
that seems totally fair.
If you can't figure this plugin out in 2 minutes, you sure as heck aren't going to wait more than 2 years to ask me about it. And you know what? I pushed back on it, like I'm known to do, and it sold amazingly well. Now, how is that helpful for me? It's helpful for me because I increased my number of users tremendously, even though they're only one-time people. Now I have a larger base of people who are using the product. And now what's happening is the two side benefits. One is I'm seeing all the other things that I'm doing now that are available. Like we could talk about why I chose Gutenberg first recently. Thank you, Sally Getch. Rhymes with catch. Or it could be that now I have a base of users into whom I can sell new stuff or new services or whatever. Because remember what I had said originally, for me, the strategy of a plugin was an entree to my expertise. It was better than a sales funnel, better than Facebook ads, better than anything else, because there's a distinctive difference. If you go out and you're an expert and then you make a product, somehow people look at you differently. Like Spence, the consultant, is different than Spence. Oh, LaunchFlows, that's that plugin, and he's got a team and whatever they perceive. It's still like the same entrepreneur in a closet.
Do you feel like it's similar to like a speaker who writes a book? Like a speaker is a speaker, they write a book, and now they've gone to the next level.
It's like a hat that means nothing except to the people who perceive it. And it's just like glasses on, glasses off. I'm the same guy. Look, I'm smart Spence. Look, I'm the casual, carefree Spence. That's fun all Spence. It is. Right.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? I'm amazed that you got pushback, but I shouldn't be. I shouldn't be amazed about anything.
Well, because people ask questions like, well, are you not going to be around in 2 years? I said, yes, I'll be around. The plugin will update. So I'm like, get your questions in early.
So what are you going to do when their 2 years run out? Are you going to offer them, they can buy extension pack?
We're all going to be living on the Mars colony founded by Elon Musk because the planet will be underwater by then. But if I am still here, here's the point. I'm well known, and I pointed this out to them. Go to the Facebook group for free. Ask a question. And you know what happens? I answer your question with like a full-blown tutorial video better than any other WordPress author anyway. Why? Because my point of LaunchFlows is to sell my consultancy expertise. And somebody sees that and they go, Spence, you're the guy I've been waiting for. So I said to them, here's a point to make. You've ever seen plugin or theme authors, and I can't blame them because they're not in the same advantageous English as a first language position, but you've seen people who make amazing plugins. They don't give their name. They don't give a picture of themselves. They don't talk on the video. And it's like, do you want to spend hundreds of dollars buying from somebody that's like an anonymous robot? I mean, that's the difference I'm saying. Is like, you could sell like water that you froze in your freezer if you found people that are thirsty on the side of the highway. It costs you nothing, but you're delivering a pain solution, which is where we started at, that doesn't require all this fancy stuff. And that's the stuff that Noah Kagan understood, and Frank Kern understood, and James Farmer understood, and Ron Popeil understood. And that's what I've lived my entrepreneurial life by.
Right. We need to wrap up the podcast part of the show. I'm going to ask Spencer in the bonus content, which you will only be able to view on the WP-Tonic Mastermind Facebook group page. So you need to go over there and join it, and you'll be able to watch the extension of this interview on there exclusively. I'll be asking,
by the way, I want to commend you this week, because I think Steve and I both appreciate that you didn't cut off in the middle of a question and an answer.
No, but actually, unlike you, Stephen was totally got used to it. So he didn't even register with him. He's got so used to it. But let's get back to this. So if you want to watch and listen to the bonus conversation, the first question I'm going to be asking Spencer is why he hasn't gone on AppSumo. Was he talking with the AppSumo people? If he was, what was his experiences? That'd be the first question, but we'll be delving a lot more about his experiences about launching a successful plugin in the WordPress community. So, Spencer, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to, Spencer?
I mean, the easiest way you can email help@launchflows.com. You can go to launchflows.com, do a free trial, full-blown launch site. The plugin has a 30-day refund, so no excuses there. And you can also go to the Facebook group on facebook.com/groups/launchflows and join for free, where there's a ton of content and training and active member questions that are probably relevant to what you're doing.
Yeah, and I want to point out, Tribe, that Spencer through LaunchFlows has been really generous to the tribe. If you go to WP-Tonic newsletter, on that page is a special offer, a third off the lifetime deal.
Yeah, that's 1/3 off. Remember, I just mentioned it's $300 lifetime for your audience. Nobody else has this deal right now, right? As this is being broadcast. $199 lifetime, unlimited sites, 2-year support, but unlimited lifetime updates and so forth. And you get a 30-day money back guarantee. I've seen several people, when you last broadcast, come in and they specifically said, I'm a fan of WP-Tonic and John sent me over, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, so go over to WP-Tonic newsletter and click the button and you'll be able to get that special deal. Thank you so much, Spencer, for your support of the WP-Tonic show and the tribe. So, Stephen, how can people find out more about you?
Head over to zipfish.io, run a speed test, see how much faster your site could be.
Yes, they're the kings of WordPress speed and hosting. So you want to go over there.
We recommend zipfish.io inside of LaunchFlows too, for anybody who's.
Yeah. Do you recommend WP-Tonic when it comes to?
We do. That's a different business, but we do recommend WP-Tonic for anybody who needs hands-on help and an expert team, for sure.
Around education, about
specifically, yeah, but even for other things. John, you and I, we can say to people, you and I have known each other. You were originally in my 1WD community way back when. And since that time, you know, I found it very comfortable that you have a very specific niche that is really in your
education.
Expertise.
We're there for the education entrepreneur.
And it's the same thing we're just talking about, which is that you have a unique set of skills, like Zipfish has a unique set of capabilities for hosting, for speed and otherwise, that you don't have to be the solution for everybody on a planet of 7.5 billion people. You have to have a very small niche, because then you're the best at that particular thing.
That's so true. We'll be back next week with another great interview and another great guest. But remember, go over to the WP-Tonic Mastermind Facebook group and watch the bonus video. We'll be back next week. Bye. So bonus content. So first of all, did you think about AppSumo? If you did you approach them? have you been in discussion with them? If so,
I mean,
are you prepared to share some of your
Sure, I'll share a story. First of all, I don't know if I'm saying the name right or if he's still the one involved, but way back when, I think Noah's partner was Mehmet. And I think Mehmet is the one who expanded the business and so forth. And obviously Noah's still involved. But I used to play online chess with Noah. And then we stopped.
Did you ever win?
Well, I don't want to say that he doesn't talk to me anymore because of whatever, but like, let's put it like this. I won more than I lost. So the bottom line, though, is he's a kindred spirit. He's a younger guy. He's a little nuttier because I was in my 40s, late 40s. He was in his mid 30s. So I'm probably 18 years, 20 years older than him. But the success of what AppSumo has done is undeniable, which is, I think, something he's been pursuing for a while. But here's the deal. There's a difference between an LTD that's thoughtfully priced and respects the value proposition you've offered to your previous users, which is something I protect. And I want to mention this here, versus what AppSumo is doing, which is a legitimate business model, but does reflect what I was saying was a fire sale. Here's what I mean. When people got on board with LaunchFlows, I promised them they would never regret their decision. So you paid 97 for unlimited sites for a year, then 149, 197, up to 300. When I decided to launch the lifetime deal, AppSumo's rates will differ, but it's pretty common knowledge that at best, you're going to be 40% as the seller, 60% to AppSumo. And at worst, you could be in some kind of like 10 to 90 ratio. I mean, like legitimately negative terrible cash flow for the effort.
That's terrible.
But hold on. But here's what's worse. No? They take the retail price and because they got no stake in that game, and they push it all the way down to like found it on the street corner price. Like your $300 plugin, they'll sell for $29 or something. I'm exaggerating a little. Now, what does that do to your base of users who said, but Spence, I'm subscribed for $300 a year for the thing that's $29 one time lifetime. You make me feel bad about myself. And I thought we had a special relationship. And so that's why to me, the AppSumo was a non-starter. But what I found instead was I could make two simple moves. And I'd like to think I'm inspirational for somebody else who wants to do this. Number one, I found a partner who was the hippo, who had an audience of crazy, I'll buy anything you put in front of me, lifetime deal buyers. And this guy's Muhammad Ali, believe it or not related to the boxer, but we joke about it. He's a digital think. He and I negotiated. He's half my age too, but I basically was like, hey, take it or leave it, kid. But he's a smart guy. He gave me pushback. We did a lot of things on his terms, a lot of things on my terms. We did the deal at a price, $199, that I knew I could get what I needed and still support the retail value of this because it wasn't like a fire sale. And number two, I immediately went out to my existing subscribers and I gave them all, without asking, free lifetime. So I had hundreds and hundreds of subscribers that were paying me recurring subscription. I said, you're done. You're good. And why did I do that? Because if I didn't do that, I would be like the same schmuck that we rally about on WP-Tonic show who doesn't understand human psychology, because I'd be sticking my thumb in the eye of everybody who trusted me to give me money they would just cancel their subscriptions and call me a schmuck and go buy the lifetime deal or not anyway. So might as well beat them to the punch, because just like in real relationships, you could get away with a lot of shenanigans with your friends or your boyfriends or girlfriends, your wife or husband, but you can't look in the mirror and get away with it. And for me, that was the most important part, is I knew if I was the customer, that's what I would want.
I'm not sure about that. There's a lot of people, I wonder how they can look in the mirror, but there we go. Over to you, Stephen.
One thing that you brought up when you're talking about trying to figure out how to price like lifetime license stuff is the support, and that with lifetime licenses, you offer 2 years of support. And something that I hear over and over again is that oftentimes, like as a plugin gets a larger and larger user base, it's far more expensive to support the plugin than it is to add new features or develop the plugin. Like it's just the random questions that people have, or something's broken and it's not your plugin's fault, but it's probably something with their hosting provider, but you still have to like solve all of that stuff. How how do you handle like support? Like I've emailed support, tons of times on different plugins, ranging all across the board. And some are super responsive. Other times they go into black holes. What does it look like behind the curtain when somebody emails support and asks a question about a plugin?
I love this question. Like,
you seem to love Stevens. You never say that about my bloody questions.
I love you as a person, John.
Oh, fuck you. Fuck you.
I love your questions too, John. But okay,
yeah,
so
like hell you do, like a rat. Right.
Here is the real deal in this. So in the early days of WP Fusion, and now it predated Jack Arturo, but I'm going to reference Jack Arturo at WP Fusion. In the early days of WP Fusion, Luke Stacy, who's my protege, found Jack's plugin, said, you got to get in touch with this guy. And I did. That's how I operate. I reached out to him. He immediately, we just hit it off, but he is a former marketer, but really focused on coding, appreciated how direct I was. I said, you need to retain me to help you figure this out, because he was originally focusing on that being a geeky tool. And I said, this is the most amazing connector of these two worlds for marketers, blah, blah, blah. We built a symbiotic relationship that has only grown since then. But WP Fusion is the model of all models of how to avoid problems, but how some problems are unavoidable. WP Fusion solves such a complex thing because it works on 50 plus CRMs and hundreds of plugins. And Jack, to his credit, amazing individual, the nicest guy, the most calm person you've ever met, has managed up until last year when he finally hired Ace Miranda full-time, who's amazing in his job.
He still was trying to do all that himself.
Well, he had me jump in to help him out for a while. And I was like, Jack, here's the thing. Like, there's not enough hours in my life left to handle these questions, because to Steven's point, when you have a plugin that does one thing, it's one. If you have three things, it's three. But then you have three other options, it's 9. Okay, and he is like 150 times 150. There's like, I don't know what that iteration comes down to, but the point is, for myself, I focus every day on what can I not do. The best example of that with LaunchFlows is in the other solutions that are, WooFunnels and CardFlows. They both have something that allows you to modify the WooCommerce checkout fields. So for some checkouts of a virtual product, you don't need address info. You just want email, first name, last name. Well, they've built that all in with their own code, Ajax. You know what I did? I looked in the repository and I saw there's 5 plugins that are all 5 stars that did that for free. So when LaunchFlows people need to do this, I go, and now put in the checkout field manager plugin and turn it on. Similarly, with our recent Gutenberg block scenario versus the Oxygen page builder scenario, I got a lot of heat from people who wanted me to build custom integrations with a particular page builder that I don't think is a good page builder and is very slow. And they were militant about, like, it's all my problem. And I said, or here's the idea. You guys figure out how to make this work normally, because Oxygen breaks stuff in the normal content area, which somebody did. And then I said, and here's the idea. Instead of me making 1 million templates for each of the page builders, I'm going full Gutenberg, and I'll double, triple down on it. Even though some guy made a comment like, LaunchFlows is nothing but a glorified shortcode plugin. I'm like, yes, exactly. Because since day one, shortcodes have worked and they'll continue working till the end of WordPress time. So with LaunchFlows, every function is it with shortcode.
What is it with WordPress and these negative troll types?
It doesn't. Everybody's a critic until they got to run their own restaurant. But to just finish this point, so LaunchFlows eliminates every complexity. It's the most plain Jane vanilla mechanism. I mean, it's not a secret to anybody who codes. The way it does the layouts is it waits till WooCommerce puts the stuff on the page, and then it does like the shell game. It moves stuff around. The way it does the products is it uses the off-the-shelf products and the off-the-shelf functions of WooCommerce. So when I have to change code, very infrequently is it because it's broken or complicated. And when people, like today, I had maybe a dozen questions. Does it work with Uncanny Automator? I'm like, does that work with WooCommerce? They go, yes. I go, yes, it does. does it work with blah, blah, blah? I say, does that work with WooCommerce? They go, yes. I go, yes, it does. So unlike Jack and unlike other plugins, I have less to manage. And I would recommend that for anybody because you know what? The pain is still solved, but it's,
it's solved in like a simpler, more straightforward WordPressy way.
It's the say no mentality.
Yeah. I feel like in my like WordPress trajectory, there was a point in time early on where I was very much into like the more a plugin could do without short codes and give me options and buttons to click and the more integration points, like the happier I was. But as I've like grown and matured in WordPress, the more simplistic a plugin handles something oftentimes indicates how much more stable it is going to be in the long run.
Yeah, I've got a follow-up. I've got a kind of two-part follow-up question about that, because the way we give the option to our clients when we're helping them install everything on our hosting platform is that we give them the option CartFlows or LaunchFlows, right? And they ask us why, which and the way you're not going to like this, I know, but this is how we explain
I don't mind.
it. We say, well, if you're a beginner or you're just looking for a unified interface, you're probably best looking at CartFlows. If you're a power WordPress user and you're looking for the most flexibility, the most customizability, and you've got reasonable WordPress knowledge, we suggest you go, we're set up LaunchFlows for you because you're going to love it. You'll be able to literally do anything you want to do. And that's how we explain it. But the follow-up question is, with things, you just mentioned it, Uncanny Automator, and they've got a competitor, haven't they? With these like Uncanny Automator, I see it as the Zapier of WordPress. You got things like Groundhog. You even got Lifter LMS. There's a number of these plugins that have concentrated their resources on building on all these add-ons that integrate with other WordPress plugins.
I mean, yes and no, because
I really don't see this is going to be necessary anymore. They'll be able to concentrate their attention on their core products, aren't they?
I mean, there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I can address. First of all, I want to just close the loop on it because it's relevant to short codes. Right now, remember, I mentioned going Gutenberg first, because by using short codes, LaunchFlows is universal to any page builder and native into the WordPress editor. And because all the templating and the blocks and everything are there, I can even show you a model if we were doing the screen share. Like, you don't have to literally paste a short code. You just put a block in that's the LaunchFlows billing section. It's just as easy and powerful as any WYSIWYG. I'm just leveraging the fact that like Gutenberg already has the framework. So I just took my code and I put it into the block. Ta-da. That's the example of not like, again, I'm not picking on Damon made a choice to chase Oxygen Builder's audience by making custom integration. Now, the word integration, and you were asking me in your second question, is a false word. You know why? Because I have custom integration with certain plugins like WP Fusion where it's actually unique functions. For example, when you have your upsell plugin, or I'm sorry, your upsell component in LaunchFlows, you can add custom tags if you have WP Fusion because somebody clicked the yes or the no or whatever buttons. That uses the API of WP Fusion, so it's technically a true integration. But like I just answered, you could go down the list of every single one of the 1,200 plugins that works on WooCommerce, and they're truly integrated with LaunchFlows. Why? Because LaunchFlows integrates with WooCommerce, and they integrated with WooCommerce. And it's like a Lego block. You can't say that the police station your kid built with 3 blocks is any more or less integrated because one or the other blocks is in it. They all snap together. They're integrated, you see? And so to me, that's the solution in the future to how things are built. I don't feel that businesses are going to do well. And this is where I took issue. And I spoke to, I'm not picking on him particularly, but I spoke to Shah Jahan. I spoke to Adrian. Shah Jahan seems with Groundhog to have taken a part of the bigger ecosystem approach And though Adrian is doing his own version of it, he seems to be looking to make a lot of unique individual integrations. That's my observation. And I don't want to be unfair to him. And I think that that's a fool's errand versus getting the core plugin to work universally with anything. Because here's why. We were talking before the show about how, let's say, hosting environment has changed and Like, we're in a world of plenty where there's $1 trillion+ valuation on WordPress. There is no barriers to anybody coming in. So all of us have to race to get the audience's attention before this opportunity passes. Remember when it was 2006 and Facebook first came around, or 2004 when there were 6 videos on YouTube? Because I do. Remember when you could buy a domain name with 3 letters in it? I do. So I see WordPress right now at the peak of this, like, holy shit, we're going to go downhill from here for getting on board. Because once that thing leaves the station, especially after Automatic does their whole reveal what they've been cooking up with, like Jetpack, I mean, it's going to be too late, because there'll be a couple vertical camps and everybody will be locked in their place.
If there's so many ways to take this conversation, but I just want to concentrate on the last question I put to you in your answer. What I was trying to point out with things like Uncanny Automator, and there's, like I say, that they've got a main competitor, but we use Uncanny Automator because I know their Uncanny team and I know the quality of their developer people, and I know the owner and I respect him, right? But I just think it's just going to be a lot easier, you know. A lot of plugins, instead of really concentrating on their UX experience and the ease of use, they have to waste so much energy, or they allow third parties to produce the integrations, which can be a nightmare in its own because they don't have the control over the quality of the code.
It depends on what you're doing. Back to the Jack Artur thing. Jack recently released, I don't know if it's fair to call it an SDK, but it's definitely an API. He released a component for other authors to install in their plugin, which is a model, if you will, an example of what they need to build. Because I think he even himself realized he would be 100 years old and not be done with building all the integrations into WP Fusion for other players. Instead, he said to the players, here's how you make your plugin work with WP Fusion.
So that's you say that, but Fry Themes have just recently done that as well. And don't get me wrong, Shane, the joint founder of Fry Themes, I totally respect him as a businessman and a marketer.
Are you talking about the CEO,
right, Shane, Shane, one of the joint founders.
Are you talking about Thrive Themes or Thrive from Thrive Architect, Thrive Themes?
Yeah.
I spoke to the CEO and it's a female, so maybe.
Yeah, they've got females, but I'm talking about the joint founders of the company.
I think you call him CEO, but I think he's the founder, head of development, and she's the CEO because she specifically reached out because of what you're talking about. I just want to clarify, because she was looking to see, which was good, what's going on in the market, because they realize they have a first mover problem. That product is a dinosaur on wheels, and they got to fix something.
I said to you, it's the worst. It's the worst to me. Products like architecture and Fry Themes, they're worse than a SaaS, because you've not only is it in closed garden, but you still got to deal with all the other headaches with sorting out your hosting, or getting this plugin to work with it, or get that plugin to work. To me, it's the worst nightmare of all nightmares, but that's my personal. But get back to it. They've just issued their own API.
I want to, like I say, I like to be right and not wrong. And my apologies. I spoke to Hane, and Hane is the COO. And you're right, Shane is technically the CEO. So you're correct. I'm not right on that. But I spoke to Hane about that, and it bothered.
Can I write that down?
Yeah, you can memorize. You got it on recording here forever. What are you talking about? But I want to say, I spoke to Hane about, they have a new plugin that I'm not, listen, I'm not in a position to criticize them. They're way ahead of me. But like, I can objectively at WP Launchify, because that's my business and it's been my business for 15, 16 years in WordPress, say, I didn't agree, although she was an amazing person to talk to, their strategy of coming out with a competitor of LearnDash as a primary product when their Thrive themes and Thrive Architect and all the other add-ons are so confusing and out of date. I suggested to her, I felt it would be a better use of their time if they sorted that thing out, because they already have an existing audience. If they brought that into the world of where we're at, because what I predict is going to happen is what I've talked about many times in WP-Tonic show and here. The Gutenberg editor is the tortoise in the tortoise and the hare story. And it's already hit the point where even I have said, why build 67 different flavors of templates when I can do one and everybody can use it? If your product doesn't cooperate in that level, I think that's the only purpose for your getting up in the morning until it's fixed. And I'm not saying they're not talking about it, but like launching a competitor to LearnDash, I mean, after, they spent a couple $1 million on refactoring that.
LearnDash and Lifter LMS,
Well, I mean, but like specifically with the LearnDash investment of their code,
Yeah, they're the two main.
Of course.
There's another one called Tutor, which is great, but we're not going to support it because with LearnDash and Lifter LMS, you've got two WordPress plugin providers that have been on the scene for 5 years or plus. They're established, aren't they? That train has left, as far as
I mean, let's relate that back to the bigger point. So in a world where WordPress was a bunch of people sitting around a campfire, anybody can make any meal and bring it to that potluck dinner and everybody's happy. But now we're in a world where half the internet is using WordPress, enterprise level, $1 trillion investment. There cannot be 19 different LMSs to choose from. There can be 1 or 2 or 3. That's it, right? Like you can have 20 different flavors of soda pop, but even that becomes unmanageable for small stores to carry. You can only have the big box stores do it. Most places carry 3 types of beer or 5 flavors of soda. You can't have more than a couple primary features in WordPress in the future. That's my prediction.
I just want to, before we wrap up, I just want to put this. I was recently listening to the last podcast on the Matt report, and Matt was interviewing Natalie from Access Alley. And Natalie is one of the smartest developers and entrepreneurs in the WordPress space, her and her husband. I fundamentally disagree with their philosophy around their product. Because like Theme, I see it as the worst of all worst solutions, because you're getting all the kind of minor problems of WordPress in a closed garden. But the reason why I bring it up to you is that she was talking to Matt and they were talking about Gutenberg, and they were saying, I listen to you because I really respect you, even though I take the piss out of you, Sven. And I really respect Natalie, even though she's a competitor, and I totally disagree with the philosophy of her plugin. But she is a quality individual, even though she's a competitor. But she was talking to Matt, and they were talking about Gutenberg, and they both were saying, sorry, it's still got about a year and a half before we would even touch it. And when I listened to that, I thought, yeah, maybe, if Natalie says something, I listen to it because she's a smart cookie. So but your position is different. You really
well, I mean, I have a contingency on my position, and I've said this openly. I'll say it again. I say Gutenberg isn't ready for prime time without the help of a few free plugins, one of which I'm working directly with. They got bought out by Extendify, but I've been in touch with Chris from Extendify and Redux. The plugin was Munir's plugin called Editor Plus. And what Editor Plus does is it extends the capability of Gutenberg blocks, makes them act almost the same, if not better, than things like Elementor widgets. And so again, here's how I'm interacting with this and why this is important. free plugin. Remember I mentioned Checkout Manager, and remember I mentioned like, the other free things you can do, like they already exist. So instead of building all this capability to have Gutenberg blocks that have their own custom controls, I'm like, or I could just work with the existing plugin, and that's what brings it over the hill.
The only problem with that, Spencer, is don't use I have a slight queasiness in recommending people using free plugins on paying websites, because
I don't.
You don't.
Because if you look at the WordPress repository, some of the best plugins that I use every day, like Admin Menu Editor, Janice Elst wrote that plugin like 12 years ago, and it's got a paid pro version, but the free version, it's the thing that I use with you and anybody over 50 years old. You put it in, and even if you don't use the other features, you hit the A to Z thing. It sorts the menu alphabetically on your admin dashboard. That's like mandatory for anybody over 25.
Yeah, but that example is a back-end example. I'm talking about key functionality for the front end.
But that's what I'm talking about here, back end. I'm talking about modifying a Gutenberg block behavior. I could show you an example where, so let me put it in a context.
I got to bounce real quick, guys. I got another meeting coming up, but it's been fun talking. Have a good one. Take it easy.
Bye.
If you have a situation where, like with the shortcodes with LaunchFlows, we're releasing the new version of LaunchFlows that's going to have blocks and patterns. I found in practice that people find it awkward, even if there's a list of them, to copy paste shortcodes. So instead, we built in this new version blocks. But the blocks, instead of having all these crazy complicated controls, have no controls. You drop a block, which shows a shortcode. And then with Editor Plus plugin, you immediately have access to all the custom controls. And see, to me, it is possible. You're right. It's possible in a year or two that Editor Plus or something might go away. But in this case, it was bought by Extendify for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Extendify is the CEO of that used to be on Automatic's board. He was the guy that did the Tumblr deal, a really smart guy. And so the point I'm saying is, like, in that case, I feel safe enough to go, why reinvent that wheel?
Yeah, I think the difference is probably there's a middle ground, because I think what you're pointing out is that you recommend free plugins that you have checked out a bit. You find out who the author was, are they a serious person? Have they done this before? You check it out.
Or that the code is solid.
I'm talking about people that don't understand that. They just go, they find a free plugin, install it, and then it's doing something key. And then the support is, because it's free, but they just don't understand that they're not going to get any decent support. They're not. But you got to understand something. The benefit of WordPress has always been historically, and that may change now because of React and other things. It's the only platform and the only business model that I can think of that I've ever been in where, like, let's say when I was a home builder, there wasn't a place I could go drive up to and grab like free plumbing fixtures. But in WordPress, I can literally get a free plugin that some person built for their own reason, who then shared it. It's better than a paid version. But you're right. You can't just go like eat food out of a dumpster, and you can't pick up plugins from strangers. But if you've vetted them, and that's what WP-Launchify.com does, we have figured out which things work and which things don't. I can safely say that it's a better choice for me not to reinvent that wheel, because now, as to your question with Nathalie and Matt, as of today, I would agree with them. Gutenberg by itself has a lot of rough edges, a lot of things to fix. But if I could take a free plugin plus my plugin and Gutenberg and show that I can avoid doing the hard thing, like if I'm the end user, instead of for myself or my client having to build on Elementor and Divi and Oxygen and this and Beaver Builder and all these other, I can build one set of plugins or solutions for Gutenberg, and they work inside of all of those. Yeah, I understand. I just want to wrap it up now, but I just want to make one thing clear to the listeners and viewers of this. Like I mentioned Shane and his architect and Fry Themes, and I've mentioned Natalie, and I've criticised them, but they both Shane and Natalie and her husband are real quality people. it's not I'm attacking them for their business ethics or them. I just want to say I'm definitely not doing it because they're three people that I totally respect. It's just an argument about philosophy, about I see them as building kind of gated gardens, where I think the strength of WordPress is its modularization, that you can take one specific and bolt it all together, and you're getting the best of breed. Where I see these enclosed gardens as totally against that philosophy that I have. I just wanted to make that clear to the viewers of this. We're going to wrap it up now.
I want to just add one thing to that. I know, because listen, I don't feel you were making an ad hominem attack, but I do feel that it's fair to clarify, because I didn't speak to Shane, I spoke to Hane, and I had previous conversations with Natalie in the early days. I think she says Natalie, but maybe I'm wrong. Her and her husband do an amazing job.
Pronouncing it incorrectly.
But here's the thing. Neither one of those people, because they're entrepreneurs, are thin-skinned. And it's not an ad hominem attack, but they've also got a real problem on their hands. And I think they know that. That's what Hane was explaining to me. They know their code base is out of date, but here's the reason it's a problem. They have this huge base of users that's embedded into that thing. And that's now the problem. Like when Natalie made the decision, or they made the decision to drive backwards on the highway with their plugin, which is true in many ways. It goes against the grain of everything WordPress is supposed to do and the way it interacts with other stuff. They did it intentionally because they wanted to make, like, in my understanding, a platform in a platform in a plugin. Essentially, you're in or you're out.
I think you're being very generous here.
But the point is the same. They've got a problem. Yeah. Their problem is they committed to doing something at a time when it was okay to do it. And now they've got a base of users that, kind of like Infusionsoft tried to move to Keep, or PayPal decade later, still trying to change to PayPal, whatever it is now. At a certain point, it's maybe dangerous to alienate the people that are comfortable with their wagon being pulled by a horse and try to make it a Tesla. Yeah. And I think that's a real big problem. I'm not suffering from that. And I respect the fact that they may be, but when I give advice or when people ask me, I say, look, all I can do is tell you, I got 54 years on the planet, and 40 of those plus I've been an entrepreneur. Your plugin or your theme is not going to work in this new system. Maybe you need to just make a new copy or a new version and leave the old one alone. But it is a problem that requires a lot of energy. So I respect that being an issue.
Just on philosophy, I'm totally against Access Alley and Fry Themes. To me, like, I'm just going to repeat myself, they are totally placed, and a lot of people just don't understand what they're buying into. And for philosophical reasons, I'm totally opposed to these kind of WordPress enclosed garden setups. And they're not the only one. There's membership plugins out there.
I mean, there's tons of legacy stuff.
There's a host of these enclosed gardens, and they just, in the end, they just cause a nightmare for their user base if they want to expand outside a certain level. We'll be back next week with another great discussion. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.